Fortune Podcast, From Pain and Prison to Purpose, Episode 13. I am Fortune Reigns, and this is Fortune. Segment 1. The Seasons of Rebuilding and Why Some Take Longer than Others. Not every season of rebuilding looks the same. Some seasons are marked by visible progress. The income moves, the relationships heal, the structure holds. The results begin to surface and validate the work you have been quietly putting in. Those seasons feel like confirmation. They feel like proof that the decision, the change was real and that the direction is right. And then there are other seasons. Seasons where nothing appears to be moving, where the effort is identical, but the results are invisible. Where you are doing everything right by every measure you have, and yet the external evidence refuses to match the internal investment. Those seasons are not failure. They are formation. The deepest growth in any rebuilding process happens underground before it becomes visible above the surface. Like the root system of a tree that spreads wide and deep for months before a single branch extends to the air. The work is happening. The foundation is being laid. But because it is not yet visible, it is easy to interpret the silence as stagnation. It is not. And the men who understand this are the ones who eventually produce results that appear sudden to everyone who was not paying attention to the private work. There is nothing sudden about them. They are the accumulated product of every season, including the quiet ones where nothing seemed to be happening, but everything was being built. The reason some rebuilds take longer than others is not always about effort. Sometimes it is about the depth of the damage that preceded the rebuild. Some foundations require more clearing before new construction can begin. Some internal rewiring takes longer because the original programming ran deeper. That is not an excuse for delay. It is context for patience. Patience directed by continued action is not passivity. It is wisdom. Here is your action step. Identify which season you are currently in. Is this a visible progress season or a formation season? Name it honestly. Then ask, am I moving consistently regardless of what is or is not yet visible? If the answer is yes, trust the season and keep building. If the answer is no, recommit to movement today. Not when the season changes, today. Because every season has a purpose, even the quiet ones. Especially the quiet ones. Segment 2. Anger as information, not instruction. Let us talk about anger. I repeat, let us talk about anger. Because for a significant number of men who have been through the criminal justice system, anger is one of the most familiar emotions in the inventory, and also one of the most mismanaged. The anger is justified. Let that be stated clearly without qualification. The injustice is real. The systemic failures are documented. The personal betrayals, the circumstances that contributed to where you ended up, the way the system treated you once you were inside it, the barriers it erected after you came out of it, the way certain people in your life responded to your struggles, all of it is legitimate cause for anger. I repeat, all of it is legitimate cause for anger. The anger is not the problem. The problem is the instruction most men have been given about what to do with it. Two instructions dominate. The first is to process it, to perform calm, to absorb every injustice and every slight and every barrier without visible reaction, because any visible reaction will be used against you. And there is survival logic in that instruction. It has kept men out of additional trouble in environments where expressing anger was dangerous. But suppression is not resolution. Suppressed anger does not disappear. It goes underground and surfaces as depression, as self-destruction, as the quiet erosion of motivation and hope, as the background belief that nothing will ever be fair, so why try? The second instruction is to discharge it, to let it out, to respond to every provocation with the full force of what has been building. And that instruction has cost men their freedom, their relationships, and their futures more times than can be counted. Neither suppression nor discharge is the answer. The answer is direction. Anger is information. It tells you where injustice exists, where your values have been violated, where something important to you is being threatened or dismissed. That information is valuable. It points toward what matters to you, and what matters to you is connected to your purpose. When you direct anger toward purpose rather than toward suppression or discharge, it becomes one of the most powerful fuels available to you. The men and women who changed systems, who built organizations, who wrote the legislation and created the programs and told the stories that shifted the narrative around incarceration, many of them did it powered by direct anger. Not rage, directed, disciplined, purposeful anger. Here is your action step. Identify one injustice, one barrier, or one experience that still generates anger when you think about it. Do not suppress it and do not discharge it. Ask instead, what does this anger tell me about what I care about? And how can that care become a contribution? Write the answer, because your anger, directed correctly, is not a liability. It is a resource. Use it. Segment 3. The role of mentorship in accelerating your rebuild. No man rebuilds optimally alone. That is not weakness. That is architecture. The most successful people in every field, in every industry, in every walk of life have had access to someone who knew more than they did, had been further down the road than they had, and was willing to share the map. The difference for men coming out of incarceration is that access to that kind of mentorship is rarely built into the systems designed to support them. The programs tend toward case management. The support tends toward survival, and the deeper development guidance, the kind that helps a man not just stabilize, but actually build something significant, is often absent or inaccessible. So you have to be intentional about finding it. And that intentionality starts with expanding your definition, and that intentionality starts with expanding your definition of mentorship. Mentorship does not have to be a formal arrangement with a designated mentor who has agreed to guide you. It can be the man in your community whose life reflects what you are building toward and whose behavior you study and model. It can be the author of a book you have read 3 times because every page reflects something true about your experience. It can be the podcast you return to consistently because the voice in it speaks to where you are and where you are going. It can be the peer who is further along in the same journey and is willing to share what they have learned. Mentorship is access to wisdom that is further ahead than where you currently are, and wisdom can be accessed in many forms than a single designated relationship. At the same time, formal mentorship relationships are worth pursuing when the opportunity exists. When you encounter a man or woman whose life, values, and trajectory reflect what you are building, do not be too proud to ask for guidance. Most people who have built something significant did so with help, and most of them are willing to offer it when asked directly, humbly, and with clear evidence that the person asking is serious about doing the work. You also have something to offer in return: your perspective, your experience, the specific insight that comes from having navigated what you have navigated. Mentorship, at its best, is not a one-way transaction. It is an exchange. Here is your action step. Identify one person, one book, one resource, or one community that is operating at the level you are building toward. Something or someone whose wisdom is ahead of where you currently are. Then take one step toward accessing that wisdom this week. Buy the book, attend the event, send the message, make the call. Because the fastest path between where you are and where you are going almost always runs through someone who has already made the trip. Find them, learn from them, and one day be them for someone coming behind you. Segment 4. What forgiveness actually does for you. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the rebuilding process. And because it is misunderstood, it is either avoided entirely or performed without sincerity. And either way, the person who misses out most is the one who needed it most. So let us be direct about what forgiveness is and what it is not. Forgiveness is not the declaration that what was done to you was acceptable. It is not the eraser of accountability for the people who hurt you, failed you, or contributed to the circumstances that led you to where you have been. It is not weakness. It is not forgetting. It is not the restoration of a relationship that was harmful or the reopening of access to someone who has demonstrated they cannot be trusted. Forgiveness is none of those things. Forgiveness is the decision to release the grip that unresolved resentment has on your energy, your attention, and your forward movement. Because resentment is a weight, and you are trying to build, and you cannot build at the level you are capable of while carrying unnecessary weight. Think about what sustained resentment actually costs you in practical terms. Every time the person or situation you resent enters your thinking, you lose time. You lose focus. You lose the emotional resource that belonged to your direction. You rehearse the injury, re-experience the pain, and exit the encounter exactly where you started, except more depleted. That is the transaction resentment offers you. And it offers it repeatedly, indefinitely, without your conscious consent. Forgiveness ends that transaction. It does not delete the memory. It does not pretend the harm did not happen. It simply withdraws your energy from the rehearsal and redirects it toward what you are building. And there is a second dimension to forgiveness that is even more immediate, practical. I repeat, and there is a second dimension to forgiveness that is even more immediately practical for the men listening to this. Forgiving yourself. Because the resentment that most men in your position carry most heavily is not directed outward. It is directed inward. At the decisions they made, at the people they hurt, at the time they lost, at the versions of themselves they are not proud of. That internal resentment, carried without resolution, becomes the quiet voice that tells you that you do not deserve the life you are building. That it is only a matter of time before you return to who you were. That people who have done what you have done do not get to have what you are reaching for. That voice is not truth. It is unresolved resentment passing as truth. Forgive yourself, not to erase accountability, but to stop paying for what has already been paid for with your time, your freedom, and your growth. Here is your action step. Identify one person or one version of yourself toward whom you are carrying unresolved resentment. Write a single sentence releasing that resentment. Not for them, for you. Then redirect the energy that sentence frees toward one action that builds your future. Again, then redirect the energy that sentence frees toward one action that builds your future. Because the weight you release today becomes the capacity you gain tomorrow. Segment 5. Your voice is your vehicle. Everything you have survived has given you something that cannot be manufactured, purchased, or borrowed. A voice, not just the ability to speak, the authority to speak on things that most people can only theorize about, the credibility that comes from having lived what others have only read about, the resonance that emerges when someone hears you and recognizes in your words the exact truth of their own experience. That is rare. And it is yours. But a voice without a vehicle reaches no one. And this is where many men with powerful stories stall. They have the experience. They have the insight. They have lived something worth hearing. But they have not yet built or identified the platform through which that voice can travel. The vehicle can take many forms. It does not have to be a podcast, though this one is proof that audio and or video is a powerful and accessible medium for the kind of real, unfiltered truth that your audience needs. It can be a blog, a written series, a speaking engagement, a mentorship program, a community organization, a book, a social media presence built around substance rather than performance. What matters is not the specific form of the vehicle. What matters is that you choose one, invest in it consistently, and use it to deliver the message that only you can deliver. Because there are people right now who are in the middle of the story you have already lived. They are in the pain. They are in the system. They are recently out and disoriented and searching for a voice that tells them the truth about what comes next without sugarcoating it and without giving up on them. Your voice is what they are looking for. And every day you delay building the vehicle is another day they go without what they need. You do not need a perfect platform to begin. You need a consistent one, a place where you show up regularly with something real to offer. The audience for that kind of authenticity is larger than you think, and it grows in direct proportion to the consistency and depth you bring to it. Now, hear this. If you are ready to identify your vehicle and build a platform that carries your voice to the people who need it. Visit SolomonGraves.com. That's SolomonGraves.com. Again, that's SolomonGraves.com. To book a one-on-one session, we will work together to shape your message, identify your medium, and build your presence with intention and impact. Here is your next action step. Identify the vehicle that most naturally fits your voice, your story, and your audience. Then take one concrete step toward it within the next 48 hours. Record something, write something, reach out to someone, show up somewhere, because your voice is the vehicle, and the people who need it are already waiting. Give them something to find. Segment 6. The man you are becoming is already in motion. We have covered a great deal of ground in this episode. The seasons of rebuilding and how to navigate the quiet ones with the same discipline you bring to the visible ones. Anger as information rather than instruction, and how to direct it toward purpose instead of destruction or suppression. The role of mentorship in accelerating your rebuild, and how to access it even when formal pathways are not available. The true meaning of forgiveness and what it actually does for you when you practice it, not as performance, but as a strategic release of weight. And the vehicle your voice requires if it is going to reach the people who need what only you can offer. Each of these segments is a thread, and together they weave a picture of a man who is not waiting to become something. He is already in motion. And that man is you. Not the you of the future who has arrived at the destination and is looking back with clarity and satisfaction. The you of right now, today, in the middle of the process, still choosing the direction every single day without the guarantee of a visible result at the end of every effort. That version of you is the one that matters most, because that is the version doing the actual work. The finished version gets the recognition. The version in motion does the building. And the version in motion is who you are right now. There is a tendency, especially for men who have spent time in environments that stripped away agency and dignity, to locate their identity in a future state, to say, I will be this person when I have the money, when I have the relationship, when I have the platform, when the system stops blocking me, when people finally see who I am. That is not identity. That is a condition. And conditions are unreliable. Your identity is not contingent on the arrival of better circumstances. It is expressed in the decisions you make inside your current circumstances. It is demonstrated in how you handle the day you are in, not the day you are waiting for. The man you are becoming is already visible in the choices you are making right now, in the fact that you are here, that you are listening, that you are applying, that you are moving. That is not nothing. That is everything. Here is your closing action step for episode 13. Write down one sentence that describes who you are becoming. Present tense, not who you will be. Who you are in the process of becoming right now. Then read it every AM for the next 7 days before you do anything else. Because identity stated consistently becomes identity embodied. And the man you are choosing to become deserves to be spoken into existence every single day, from pain and prison to purpose. Keep moving. I am Fortune Reigns, and this has been Fortune.